The Pastor's Heart and Dominic Steele. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We are plundering the Egyptians today with Archie Poulos, thinking about what we can learn from the world of business entrepreneurs to help us in the task of Christian ministry. Archie's an old friend. He works with the Centre for Ministry Development at Moore Theological College in Sydney. Archie, there's lots to talk about these books, the Innovators' Dilemma and stuff, but let's start with The Pastor's Heart and what God has been doing on your heart recently.
Oh, thanks, Dominic. It's great to be here and thanks for inviting me. Just over the last couple of days, I've been reading and rereading a prayer or a complaint by Jeremiah in chapter 20, where he says, "The word of the Lord has consumed me, so I have to keep speaking it." And he keeps speaking it, and he keeps getting into trouble, and they put him in irons, and they make fun of him. And he says, "I just have to keep doing it." And then he has this feeling that, or the complaint really, that I wish that I had never been born because of all the pain that I'm going through. So I'm trying to work out, what does that mean for us? Because, we're not Jeremiah, but I think there are some things that are true. That is that the word of God captures you, so you have to explain and express it. And secondly, that there is, particularly in our day, as we all know now, a pushback against it. And we do have those feelings of, I wish I didn't have to go through this. So I'm asking God that he'd let me be willing to say, "God, thank you for the privilege of being able to proclaim your word, and give me the courage to keep doing it in the difficult days."
I mean, the persecution we're feeling in the West is nowhere near what Jeremiah was getting, but you're saying extrapolating out on that trajectory.
Yeah. So I'm not going to say we're like Jeremiah, but those things are true. There's always going to be pushback, because the Lord said, "Woe to you when all men speak well of you." And so we need to be willing to move out of comfortableness and acceptability, because the message we have is so important. It transforms people's lives and it brings glory to our Saviour.
Now, you've been researching for your doctorate enhanced ministry competency and how people like me can become more competent. And so how do we become more competent?
Yeah, thank you. Before I get into that, because these are the two books that I thought we could speak about today, it's important to work out what's going on and how you fit that in, because it would be too easy just to appropriate that and actually lose our gospel moorings. And I am so glad that we are people of the Word. God's revealed Word shapes our lives. And so a couple of things I think are true of the pastor's heart and of my friends, that we want to defend the faith once for all delivered, as God has given it in the Scriptures. And we also want to see the glory of the Lord cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. That's what makes our heart beat, the pastor's heart beat, and that's what we see here. It's what we saw last week at the Gospel Coalition Conference. It's when my friends get together. But one of the dangers of having such a wonderful focus is that we can also be narrow and think there is nothing to learn from anyone else. And if nothing else, Proverbs teaches us that this world, because it's been made by God, has God's fingerprints all over it. And so it's good to learn from the world. So the writer of the Proverbs says, go and have a look at the ant. It says, go and have a look at the badger. Go and have a look at the lizard. Go and have a look at the locust and learn from them. And that's what I want us to do. You called it plundering the Egyptians. And I think that's what we need to do. Now, of course, the danger is, as you see the way the world is, sometimes it's like that because it's the subject of the fall, and sometimes it's because it's the way things are. And so we must always use the Scriptures to work out which one it is. And so that's really the background. And so I've read a whole lot of books on leadership and management over the last few years to try and help us with our competency. And so I thought I'd just do these
just
two.
Before you do, I'm just thinking, when I first graduated from college, one of my friends in another church said to me, "Our minister is hopeless at everything except preaching the word and prayer." And I remember thinking at the time, what a brilliant man that he has communicated to his people that all I can do is preach the word and pray. And he said, so my friend said, so we don't let him do anything except preach the word and pray, and we do everything else. And I thought, at one level, I thought that was brilliant, but I don't think I could get away with that now.
No, I think the world has changed.
So how's it changed, 20 years?
I think that there's a whole lot of expectations and complexities in our world now. That means you need to recognise all these other things play into it, but you don't need to do them all.
Yeah, there's many more skills than just preaching the word and prayer.
And this man doesn't need to do the others. The commitment to the word of God and to prayer is crucial, but he needs to take responsibility that the other things are happening. So, for example, it's no good preaching the word if the doors are locked and people can't get in and there's no video cameras on. Yeah. And so so you've got to take responsibility that these things are done. It doesn't mean that you need to do them though. And I think what some of the research has been trying to identify what those responsibilities are that need to be covered.
Yeah. Okay. So what have you learned from the Innovators Dilemma? Well, you got a couple of books.
So there's one of them, the Innovators Dilemma, which I think is coming up on your screens anyway. I think the subtitle gives away what it's all about, and it says, "When new technologies cause great firms to fail." Clayton Christensen, the author of it, was a Mormon, and he did his doctoral work on examining hard disk drive companies, and he did that because he called them the fruit fly of technology. That is, they born, they live, they die in a day. And so you can track.
So a hard disk company is born, lives and dies, or a hard disk?
No, a hard disk company, sorry.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, born, lives and dies in a day. So there's been hundreds of them, and he explored all of them. And he has this Sorry.
There were hundreds of hard disk companies?
Yeah, you never heard of them. And in fact, of those companies that were so big, some of the top 100 companies in the United States, he says the only two that have really survived that whole period are IBM and Hewlett-Packard, and he gives reasons for it, which I'm happy to talk about in a moment.
Why did those two survive? So you're saying there was 100 floppy disk companies and 98 of them failed and 2 of them survived. And why?
Yeah. Can I don't know if we can go to the graphic.
We've got a graphic. I think we'll put it up on the screen.
Great. Yeah. If I can speak to that graphic, there it is on the screen. You can see that on the horizontal axis is time, and on the vertical axis is the performance of the product. So take disk drive, storage devices. What happens is there is actually a minimum standard that the buyers will accept. So if a drive works once and then doesn't work the next time, it's not good enough. And there's also a maximum that is needed. So you don't want to have the thing that is going to last 1,000 years because
they won't buy a new disk drive.
Yeah, that's right. And you don't need it to last 1,000 years. And that's what those two dark lines are about: the minimum that's accepted and the maximum that people want. And you can see that over time, so that's the dotted lines are those ones, over time the dotted lines improve, and we see that because our cars, a car that we bought 30 years ago, you didn't have carpet on it, you didn't have a CD player, it wasn't connected to GPS, it didn't have climate control. Now it's just normal in cars, because as time goes by, what you want gets better, and that's why the thing tends upwards. But the only reason it can tend upwards is those darker lines, which is technology improves at a faster rate. Now, the point that Christensen makes is that things that were once inferior and below what people would accept, over the period of time actually become exactly what people want. So he gives the example of the 3.5 inch.
Things that were below what people would accept?
Yeah. Well, so I'll give you the example, that might be better, and you can then ask me further questions. I get excited, so I go on fast. He talks about the 3.5 inch floppy disk drive, which some of us remember. That came into being at a time when people were using 8 inch floppy disk drives. The 8 inch drive was cheaper, it was more reliable, and you could put more information per square inch on it more easily than on the 3.5. And so the companies, because they were really good at it and could keep improving the 8 inch drive, kept doing it. The 3.5 inch drive, though, that no one wanted, kept getting better over time, and then the portable computer came in. Well, no one is going to carry an 8 inch floppy disk drive in a portable computer. That's when the 3.5 inch was needed. And by that stage, it had reached an acceptable level of performance. And so the 8 inch just disappeared overnight. Now, what happened was you had these companies that were brilliant at making 8 inch drives, brilliant at making them better every week, And it's what the market at the time wanted until the market changed, and then there was nothing left.
Now, how does that apply to Christian ministry?
Oh, if we think about it, we are very good at doing what we are doing better. And sometimes what we offer is more than people want or need, and therefore we don't see new things that we could be doing. So think of some examples. One would be our Bible study group leaders. We keep wanting to train and train and train them and put lots and lots more work into them so that they can write the world's best Bible study in half an hour. Why would we not say, look, there are a whole lot of good Bible study materials out there. Why don't you start using those, and we train you in how to use those and how to modify those so that you can actually run Bible study well, instead of putting all of this effort into creating Bible study group leaders that actually know far more than is actually needed to run a Bible study group. And with those additional resources that you're not using, you could look around and say, what else might we be able to do under God with these resources that He has given us? Because God gives us a limited amount of resources. And if you're not using them all in one area, then maybe you can free people up to do other things as well. That's one of the examples.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking back 20 years ago or something, the convention was every Bible study group leader wrote their own study from scratch every week. So a leader would need to spend Wednesday night leading the study and Tuesday night writing the study. But that meant they didn't get any time to work on other aspects of what was going on.
Meeting up with people to pray for them and pray with them. They just get squeezed out. So what I'm suggesting is, I wonder whether we have actually, because we are good at it, have actually gone to a level that is higher than is necessary for what our people need and want.
Okay. So I guess there's a higher than is necessary and lower than is necessary, is that right?
Yeah. Can I come on to that in a sec? Just to give another couple of examples you asked. One is ministers, because lots of you are pastors. To spend 40 hours writing a sermon
is obviously cost inefficient, because that's all I've got.
Yeah, that's right. That's all you've got in a week. And so to say, I'm only going to give 10, 15 hours to the sermon preparation, and you think, oh, no, I've got to do the very best that I can. But does that additional 20 hours actually deliver what is necessary? It might make you feel better. It might be your area of competence. But given the resource that you are under God, maybe you could be doing other things. So maybe you've gone above what's being expected. To pick a sacred cow, another one might be our music as well. Some of us are involved in churches where music has to be absolutely perfect. That would be wonderful, but it actually comes at a cost. And now things that are under-resourced, though, sometimes if you can take those resources that we are over-resourcing and apply them to the under-resourcing, then maybe we can move them from a 3.5-inch floppy disk drive that is inefficient and breaks down to one that actually meets the requirements. But you've got to put energy into it.
I think you were telling me the other day, it's easier to move something from a 10% performance to a 50% performance than it is to get something from an 80% performance to a 90% performance. Do you sort of unpack that?
Well, I think that just captures it. It's just the improvement. When you're at 10%, it's easy to improve it. When you're at 90%, it's actually very difficult, and some people can't get over that. So why not leave it at 90%, 80%, and get the 10% to 50%? So to give you some examples of what is inefficient, I was involved in a little church plant, which is still my passion and the warmest thing in my life, is the Greek Bible Fellowship. We started with 2 people. That was fairly below the radar, but in God's goodness, we raised up a dozen people to become pastors of all different ethnicities, and gave a model of how that might be done in other ethnic settings. And so it was an underperformer, but you put some resources in there and you can grow it. So that's all I'm suggesting. So
take me through some other areas of church life. So you've talked about the magnification or the platform area, the music. You've talked about community groups, Bible study groups. What kind of welcoming? How might we overperform and underperform in the whole connection of newcomers area?
Yes, I haven't put much thought into that, but you need to ask the question, are we overperforming? So, for example, we who are regular members of church think that deep engagement with people is really a great sign of community. But somebody who is new to us, who we are welcoming into our church life, can well be offended by that, because they're just swamping me. I just want to sit in the back and be invisible and hear something that might be of value to me. And so what we do is we say, we want to get your name, we want you to give us some feedback, we're going to ring you this afternoon, we're going to visit you tomorrow afternoon. They're not bad things to do, but I'm just saying we need to think about, are we overperforming in that? A friend of mine...
I think, just as you say that, I think we worked out that I think we were putting too much energy in between first and second visit, whereas the second visit people were the people who were really potentially going to join us. And so I think we worked out we need to put more effort in the post-second visit energy rather than between the first...
It's that sort of thing.
Or at least having that discussion.
Well, a friend of mine shared some research with me the other day where he said that if people sought you out online and gave you information about themselves, you are more likely to get them engaged with you. This is not Christian, it's just secular. You're more likely to get them engaged with you if you texted them back than if you rang them. For the same sort of thing, that people feel as though you're intruding on them when you ring, but when you text, it's not an intrusion, it's a how can I help you sort of statement.
What about studying Hebrew? Is that necessary?
It's great. I think it is for people who are going to become biblical scholars. I'll make it even sharper, studying Aramaic, because people study Aramaic. There's only a few chapters of the Bible that are in Aramaic. And so you've got to ask yourself, is this what everybody needs? And at our theological college, we say, no, it's not what everybody needs, it's an option, but you have to choose it as an option. But why, that takes a lot of energy to learn other languages. And so you've got to work out, is it the right thing for you in your setting to do this?
Let me be provocative. I heard somebody say, I've seen no link between the pastor having studied Hebrew and church growth, whereas I have seen a link between the church having a competent drummer and church growth. So he wanted to swap Hebrew for drumming.
Yes. That may well be the case. I think I'd want to...
I can feel bolts of lightning.
I'd want to fine-tune that a little bit. It depends on the ministry and the task that God has assigned to you. If you're going to be somebody who is teaching the Old Testament, for example, to others, you must have the original language. And so it depends on where God has positioned you, I think.
Next book.
Okay, can I just say, a couple of questions that I wanted that this raises for me, that I'm trying to do now is, where are we excessively expending our resources? So you've given some examples, and could they be deployed elsewhere is one of the questions I've got. And what about what is it that the people we are seeking to serve are wanting? Because we just assume what people will want. Now, what they want may be not what they need, but at least we need to know what they want. And if what they need is here and what they want is down here, then we can see that disconnect and help them to see why it's necessary. But just to keep going on and saying this is what you need and not find out what they want, I think is a danger for us.
Give me an example.
Well, the one is that we just talked about of welcoming. Some people don't want to be swamped. And so you've got to find out what they want, and then you can work out then how do we help them to feel comfortable, because at welcoming it's actually helping them to feel comfortable in this group and uncomfortable as they are challenged by the Word of God. And so that's what we've got to. So they all want to feel comfortable in what they hear. So you don't want to change that, but you do want to change the way that they can feel comfortable in just coming in and hearing it and engaging with it.
Now, Eric Ries has written this book, The Lean Startup.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, the lean startup is a term that seems to be used regularly, and I have only just come across it recently. His subtitle doesn't help me, how constant innovation creates radically successful businesses, but the way he writes and what he writes about, I think, is really important. he talks about his own story, which was as a computer programmer. So he started a number of companies, sold them for huge profits, and so he's got skin in the game in Silicon Valley. And he said he started life as a programmer, and what you do as a programmer is you want to make sure as you sell a product, all the bugs are gone. And he said he worked for a company that deliberately published some work that was full of bugs. And he said, how is that possible? But what happened was, as they sold the product, they said to people, this will be, there's problems in this, let us know what the problems are so we can make the thing better and better for you. And that's what his model is. That is, we keep thinking, I want every I dotted, I want every T crossed, I want to know exactly what I am doing before I'll start doing something. And that doesn't work. I see it with operating systems for computers. They keep releasing beta after beta after beta because they come up with an idea, they release it to some people to trial it, and then they get feedback, and then they make the next thing better. And he's saying, what makes you think that in your head you can conceive of what the best thing to have is? And so he talks about what you need to do is you start somewhere. And he said you start with a vision of where you want to go, but don't set that in concrete because you don't know before you start whether what you've conceived is the best thing. So start with where you want to go, with your vision. Start something, trial it, learn from it, and then clarify where you want to go and how you're going to get there. That's what it does. And so I think in ministry, because we are so concerned that the Word of God remain pure, that we're not willing to try different things, that we don't give up on what God says and the means that He does it, that is by the power of the Word and prayer, is not the same as saying there's lots of different ways of getting there. And so to say that I can chart how to get there before I've even tried anything, I think is actually an exercise in arrogance. And so he's saying, know where you want to get to, have a go, start something, have a go at it and work it out. And then he says, also, as you start going along things along the way, make sure that you keep assessing how it's going. So you say, this is what we are going to do, and you give it a go for a while and you think, oh no, that's not the best way of doing it, we need to slightly change. And so he uses the term pivoting for that. And as you walk...
Or tweaking, really.
Yeah, tweaking or tacking if you're into driving yachts. In walking, the most important thing is just as you're putting your foot down before you take the next step, because the angle that you place your foot enables you to change direction. And he's saying, start by taking your first step, and then as you've experienced your first step and you see what's going on, you can move your foot just a little bit, and so you can change direction so you can get to where you want to get to. What he says to... Sorry, he says you need to pilot what you're doing. That is, give things a go and learn from them rather than starting really big.
Yeah.
And as I was reading that, I was remembering what Coles used to do. I don't know if they still do it. They used to ask for ideas for supermarkets, and then they'd get all the ideas and they'd pick the best 15, say, and then they would try those 15 ideas in one supermarket. As they saw it in that one supermarket and saw how to make it a bit better, they'd then trial it in 5 supermarkets. And then when they'd made it a bit better, then they'd trial it in 20 supermarkets. And then when they'd got it right, they'd then put it out to all supermarkets. And that's what he's saying. So what you need to do is start up leanly, because if you want to have everything sorted out before you start, it takes a lot of energy and you won't get the optimal product. That's what he's saying.
Let me ask you for 3 examples. A kind of a church-wide example, a little decision, and then a medium-sized one.
I don't know.
I mean, a church department one.
I'll give you the example. I talked about the Greek Bible Fellowship a couple of minutes ago. We started that up because we thought that Greeks would attract Greeks. What we discovered was, I can say it because I am one, wogs attract wogs. That is, second-generation misfit people attracted second-generation misfit people. So we started the Greek Bible Fellowship. The first night we even sang one of the songs in Greek, but on that first night we had a Yugoslav, a Muslim Lebanese person, a Chinese person, all these other different ethnicities that didn't quite fit anywhere else. So there's an example of starting with one goal and realising even after that first night that the target group is actually different to what you expected it to be. A church-wide one is...
So was Greek Bible Fellowship the wrong name for it?
It was. We retained it for a long time, probably longer than we should have, which was My Recalcitrance.
Right.
So it changed its name to Multicultural Bible Ministries.
Right,
Cross-Cultural Bible Ministries is what we changed it to. A church-wide one is, we're probably all aware of the Royal Commission into Institutional Child Abuse, the reactions, responses. We have been told that we need to institute supervision as the Anglicans in Sydney. And I suspect that we will not get what the very best method of supervision is by conceiving it in our head and just rolling it out. What we need to do is think of what a good one is from the best evidence that we have and pilot it, see what we learn from that piloting, and then improve it next time and then improve it the next time. That's the sort of thing. So it's that lean startup idea. Rather than having everything sorted out, everything gold-plated so that there's no chance of failure, then you're either left with pass or fail. If the thing fails, the whole thing falls apart. If you pilot something and it's not quite right, you can tweak it, to use your language, or pivot to make it even better.
And a little project that you might take on?
I think, I know you're going to be we're thinking now about Christmas activities. And so there's some little projects that you could do there. So schools are going back now. People are desperate to have engagement, the kids to have other engagement. So try something small at an after-school club just before Christmas that you can invite people to your Christmas events to. It's that sort of thing. What it will do is, if the Lean Startup is right, it will show you if what you've done doesn't work, and so you can jettison it. It will show you if what you have done works well, so you can keep redoing it. It will also show you that this is a good idea, but we need to do a bit more work on it, so let's pivot to actually make the next time round better.
Is what you're saying, I mean, you hear the line, building the plane while you fly it.
Yeah. You're building the bridge while you're walking across,
Yeah. Sometimes my staff, I think intuitively that's what I like doing, and sometimes my staff team get frustrated with me for not planning in advance enough. Do you?
Yes. That's the hard thing. That's where wisdom comes in, and none of these books help you with wisdom. What they are is a secular resource that we need to consider. And so sometimes we do need to plan better, so that, for example, just how do we assess what we have done? If you have no way of assessing it, you'll never be able to pivot to do better. So things like that you've got to consider. But one of the things I think that makes us hesitant is that we must not compromise on the gospel, which is where we started, but there's all sorts of different ways that we can reach our goal, which is to see people brought to know Jesus and matured in him, so they might live their whole lives for him and share eternity forever. There's a whole lot of ways you can do that, and you've got to separate the two out. Don't compromise on the gospel, but be willing to navigate and tack your way through. And so I think the Lean Startup and the Innovator's Dilemma helps us with both of those.
Great. Archie Poulos, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, everyone.
My guest on The Pastor's Heart, Archie Poulos. He's with the Centre for Ministry Development at Moore Theological College in Sydney, and we've been talking The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen and the Lean Startup, and what we in Christian ministry can learn by plundering the Egyptians. You've been with us on The Pastor's Heart, and we will look forward to your company next Tuesday afternoon.